Good morning and happy Tuesday 10 at 10. I am your host, Richard Charpentier. I am the owner and founder of Baking Innovation, a thinking product development group where we help customers with, developing new products and bring innovation in a category. But today, we're here to answer your questions on Tuesday 10 at 10 for you, the bakers, by a baker. So again, I'm a certified master baker from France. I've been, 34 years. I have a degree from Kansas State in cereal chemistry. Love, the art and science of baking. So hopefully you find the information we're talking about valuable. Okay, first question. Someone wants to know the temperature, why baking with high altitude baking changes and why it's difficult to get the same type of baking as soon as you have high altitude. So the reason why is because due to the pressure, as you change the altitude, the pressure changes. And what's going on is it's going to be baking faster. And by baking faster, meaning what do? Your product, you're baking it in 20 minutes, and all of a sudden it's baked in 18 minutes. What should I do? So as a rule of thumb, you're going to have to experiment for yourself, but based on whatever product, whether or not it is a cake or bread, it will change. So overall, simply, I would start basically increasing your bake temperature by about 10 to 30 degrees. So, and you decrease your baking time by 5 to 8 minutes, especially if it's something for around 30-minute bake. And if it's longer, just longer. So what you're doing, you're baking basically faster with a higher temperature. Basically, you're shortening your time and you're increasing your temperature. So you want to set it faster. And often for breads, I would add extra liquids because it's going to change, it's going to evaporate quicker. So the boiling point, everything changes. It's chemistry. So hopefully it helps, because it varies for breads, it varies for chemical leaveners, and, shoot me a note on BAKERpedia with the resources if you need more help. Would love to help. And next question. We have somebody asking about the use of Calpro in breads, but relating to the Annex 2 of regulation for the EU. If you're allowed to use, unfortunately, I wouldn't mind getting into it and as a conversation, as a debate, and see, can you use it and read through it. But I'm based in Philadelphia. I understand European regulations and they might differ, but for that, I would definitely go with a specialist, a regulatory specialist within your country to answer the right question, because this is something that has to do with your government and it's highly regulated. So check with them whether or not you can use Calpro. And I'm sure you can find some local people who are used to dealing with same as in the US with USDA regulatory and FDA. So since we have a little more time, I wanted to, talk about a book, which is a favorite of mine, and I collect, antique books. And this little book right here, as you can see, this is a book from 1778. So it was written, it's an original. It's basically Le Parfait Boulanger ou a traité complet. So it's basically back in 1778, it's pre-revolution time in France. The King Louis XVI is really scared of, an uprising of the population. So, and we're talking about the beginning of, chemistry. Before that, we're talking about, it's a mid 18th century. A lot of things are happening, a lot of invention, industrial revolution is coming in place. People are using science, but it's an interesting book that, to realize little facts like did you know that when gluten was discovered in 1750s, mid 18th century, by a scientist called Beccari, Beccari, and he realized that the properties of gluten were only found in wheat. But at the time, so interesting is how, what were the grains being used, and it's spelt was used heavily and grown heavily. Rye was grown heavily and used heavily. Barley was used again to make breads. All of those were used to make bread, or form of breads. Turkish wheat, or blé de Turquie, which is, if you look at the history, this is very ancient wheat, was used 6,000 years ago, on a large scale in Turkey already. So what you see, it's sort of the family of or where they originated. You get buckwheat was used as well a lot in bakeries. Regular wheat and potatoes were used in bakeries, and it's interesting. You see the type of specialty breads they would make, and they would make special soup bread, and which was very heavily consumed back then. And you had a potage, meaning it's different in the soup where it's a little thicker with vegetables. And you would go to your bakery to order breads for how you were eating. Here today, in modern bakeries, in the U.S., is you get a sliced bread and it's done. But it's very interesting to see how we've evolved as a generation and where we are today. And I truly hope we're going to see a revival of grains the way I mentioned, spelt, rye, barley breads, potato breads. Even though we see some of that, but we've relying a lot on wheat, and hopefully in the future we'll see more grains. So that was a little bit of something I wanted to share with you. There's plenty of great, excellent facts in this book and I've read most of it, not all of it. And every time I pick it up, I'm really fascinated with how much knowledge and how much little facts that we've forgotten are still in there. And by the way, an interesting fact: a flour back then, at an average of about 7 to 8% protein, very low protein to make bread. But it was really about the quality of the protein, the gluten, versus the quantity today, where, if we get something for 7 and 8, we're considering it as a flour for the purpose of making maybe pastries and cookies, lower protein. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate you following and listening. And again, happy Tuesday, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, my friends.